You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today we go to a number of very interesting places with my guests. First, we go to Zimbabwe to learn about the making of a documentary film on the life story of a remarkable woman. Very moving story. Then we go into outer space to learn about space law, how important it is, how overlooked it is, and how we can have a voice in it. And last, we return to planet Earth to find out 100 things each of us could do that are inexpensive and vitally important to women to help save this planet and the female people especially on it. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. Way inside the headlines, there's a piece written by my friend and sister Edythe Osman, who has been a guest on this show. She is the founder and CEO of Karama, an NGO that works to end violence against women and to promote women's participation across the Arab region. She's a member of the UN Women's Global Civil Society Advisory Group, and she's been named as one of the world's 500 most influential Muslims. And Edythe's piece is on Syrian women who sometimes disappear into the vagueness of, oh yes, we know they're suffering, they're sort of in the news, how dreadful, turn the page. She wrote a piece for the Independent in the United Kingdom, and I'm going to quote some sections from it because it's coverage that doesn't really get out there as much as it should. 4 million Syrians have sought refuge abroad, while a further 7.6 million have been displaced internally. And although the refugees who reach European shores, for example, are more often than not men, the actual humanitarian crisis affects far, far more women. With men either largely engaged in fighting or prevented from leaving conflict zones, the majority of displaced Syrians actually are women. But fleeing the war does not mean that they have escaped violence and poverty and degradation. They have to pass through areas controlled by armed groups. They have to negotiate checkpoints where rape and sexual assault are commonplace. They're almost assumed. And when they finally arrive in poorly resourced camps, they face huge difficulties in trying to gain access to the most basic services, and particularly to any reproductive health care. And displacement also amplifies the economic factors and the security factors that drive early marriage in the region. So it leaves girls even more vulnerable to this form of abuse. And for example, you can see that the rate of child marriage among Syrians in Jordan, where they're in camps, has doubled between 2011 and 2012. Women who remain in conflict areas face other particular threats and violence. The UN recently reported that women are increasingly being targeted in kidnappings. Where fighters have failed to defeat their other factions militarily, they instead take their vengeance on abducting their opponents' female relatives as a means to sometimes blackmail combatants into surrendering. You know, Claude Lévi-Strauss once wrote a famous book, The Cooked and the Raw, in which he talked about women being used as the verbs by which men communicate to each other. We're the envelopes in which they send each other messages. And it is deplorably true. So when you can't get at the men involved, one group of men takes vengeance on the other group's women. Much of Syria remains under the control of such extremists as al-Nusra Front or, of course, Daesh, ISIL or ISIS. And the atrocities that those groups commit are well documented. But just as evil and destructive and pernicious an aspect of life under their rule is the repression that just saturates women's daily lives under their control. Prior to the war, for example, state secularism meant that women enjoyed degree, at least, of personal freedom in their dress. But in these extremist-controlled areas, of course, they're forced to cover their faces. Even then, they're not permitted to leave their homes without being escorted by a male relative. And since thousands and thousands of men are away fighting, wounded, or killed, what this effectively means is that women are living under house arrests. And yet, they are heads of households. So how are they going to feed their children? An estimated 250,000 Syrians have been killed in the war, the vast majority men. And the slaughter has left thousands of women as heads of households, with even greater responsibilities falling on them as at the same time that they remain drastically underrepresented in any diplomatic negotiations. When Syrian opposition groups discussed the peace process in Riyadh, only 10 of the 108 participants were women. Talks in which women are underrepresented almost inevitably result in outcomes that take absolutely no account of women's needs. For example, the Riyadh conference recommended the creation of a 34-member high negotiations committee, which had only 2 places for women. And it called for women's representation in transitional institutions to be only 25%. So this, of course, compounds the suffering and adds further injustice to the huge burden that Syrian women are already carrying. We can't forget this, and we can't just wince and turn the page, because it's going on right now as you listen to these words. And now it's time for my first guest. Lorie Conway, who is the creator of the documentary film Beatrice Metetua and the Rule of Law, is herself an American independent producer and filmmaker. Her work has received Peabody, DuPont, and Cable Ace awards. Her work on Forgotten Ellis Island was supplemented by grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, and she has produced an unforgettable film about Beatrice Metetua. And now you'll learn who that is. Lorie, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much, Robin, for your interest in this. I appreciate it, and happy to be here.
Oh, who could not be interested in this winning combination? I mean, there's you, a prize-winning American filmmaker and producer. Your work was received the Peabody and the DuPont and the Cable Ace Awards. My God. And then there's your subject, Beatrice Metetua. Tell us about Beatrice Metetua and this remarkable film.
Well, she's been called one of the bravest lawyers in Africa, and truly it's been such a privilege to get to know her and to shine a light on her and her work in Zimbabwe, as well as her inspiring persona that has actually created and organized a school named after her in Uganda, after they saw the first film that I did about her. But clearly for the last 3 decades, she's been living in Zimbabwe as a human rights lawyer, defending victims of Robert Mugabe's often brutal regime.
Yes.
At great risk to her own life and her family's. And yet she, as she says so evocatively, somebody has to do it. Why shouldn't it be her? And what a call to action, right? From a person who, she's, I say, the tallest 5'5" woman I've ever met.
Just amazing. And there's this incredible, quote from her. I knew I did not want to be carrying babies on my back and working in the fields. That wasn't going to be for me, and it wasn't going to be for my sisters either. So somehow she fought her way through to school out of a farm without electricity or running water, and a father with 6 wives. And
yes, and she's the eldest daughter of about 50 children.
50 children. Wow. And she got to university in Scotland, and she got to law school, and then she turned it all back into activism. How extraordinary.
Yes. She, as many of us do, she moved to Zimbabwe for love, married a Zimbabwean academic, and set up shop, actually working for the Mugabe government in the first few years when it was looked upon as an enlightened one that was going to change the country with a liberation hero.
Right.
And yet within a few years, she saw that there was very selective justice being meted out. It wasn't a matter of whether you were on the right side of the law. It was whether you were on the right side of the regime, how you were treated. And she could not tolerate that and saw, sadly, a growing niche, the need for human rights defending. And she said to me, she really didn't understand the impact of that decision until there were victims of torture, victims who disappeared, women who were being brutalized, appearing at her doorstep. And that really was a game changer for her. And it suddenly became more of a calling than anything else, and she has stuck with it through thick and thin.
It can't have been easy for you either to be filming, presumably in Zimbabwe. I mean, which is now a real police state.
Well, there is a law called against committing journalism. They call it.
That what they call it these days.
yeah, and so I fortunately had a wonderful Zimbabwean filmmaker partner with who I worked with, and clearly could not have done this film without him. And I also asked some very brave people within the country to do some of the filming for us, because we really could not stop and take shots freely. And yet the risk to me was nothing compared to the risk to the defendants, who were sitting with me at great risk, talking about their cases and the role in which Beatrice was defending them and what she did for them. And she saved lives. This is a woman.
Of course she did.
This is a woman who is really the word inspirational is an understatement. In fact, Fortune magazine this past year called her one of the top 50 leaders in the world, and she came in at number 22, ahead of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. I'm truly not surprised. How can people see the film, because it's not at the moment in theaters but it is online.
It's online. You can go to linktv.org and look up Beatrice Mtetwa and the Rule of Law. Just put in Beatrice and then Mtetwa, Beatrice Mtetwa, and the Rule of Law, linktv.org. You can see it there. And it's been out for 2 years now. We've had it shown throughout the continent of Africa through Fox distribution. It's been seen in screenings on 3 continents. Amnesty International showed it in field offices. We have given 5,000 DVDs away to schools and community groups through the support of the Bertha Foundation. The film was supported by the U.S. Institute of Peace, the International Bar Association, BritDoc, the Guardian, the Scott Trust, many small donations. So there's been great support for the film. It's really helped Beatrice elevate her work as a human rights lawyer. She was internationally known in legal circles, and indeed has won remarkable prizes within the international legal community. But this really shined a light on her fearless efforts in Zimbabwe, as well as shining a light on the conditions which continue in Zimbabwe today. The 2013 election was not a free and fair one.
No, of course.
Again, the regime, cooked the books, and lots of dead people and duplicate votes were voting in that rigged election.
Yeah.
And while Shangarai was not the perfect candidate, he's a flawed one, but he certainly would have been an alternative to Mugabe.
Of course.
Sadly, only 2 countries, Australia and Botswana, stood up against that circuit election.
Talk for a minute. Let me interrupt you because I don't want to run out of time without talking about the sequel, as it were.
Yes.
The sequel that you're working on now, right? Or you're fundraising for it now, and that's going to be the story of a group of teachers in Uganda who were so inspired by seeing the first film. This must feel awfully good to you. They were so inspired by the first film on Beatrice that they started a school named after her and included the teaching of human rights in the curriculum in Uganda. So this will be the sequel film, Tiny Ripples of Hope. Tell us about that, and what's the ETA on that one?
Yes, no, I'm in the research stage right now and fundraising and looking for partnerships to help me tell this story. And I hope one of them will be Amnesty International, who showed the first film in their field office, as I mentioned.
Right.
And one of the groups that watched the film were a group of teachers from Kalangala Island within Lake Victoria. And they watched the film, and they were so inspired by Beatrice that they thought, we need a school in one of our villages in Kalangala. Let's start a school, name it after Beatrice if she's okay with that, and incorporate what's called human rights education within the curriculum. And so it's been over a year now. This is a small little school in a very poverty, very, very poor village within Kalangala Island, but it has great promise. The children are engaging in lessons about their human rights, understanding more about ethical leadership, what really justice, the rule of law means, their responsibilities as citizens, what voting, how voting and activism can make a difference in their lives and others. And they're really engaging, and the students in a very fundamental way are beginning to find out about their rights, and the students and then the teachers are learning as well. I mean, this is a nascent effort on their part.
It's quite thrilling what you're doing. It really is. So listen, folks, all you listeners, we'll have to wait for the second film a little longer for Tiny Ripples of Hope. But Beatrice Mtetwa, Mtetwa, and the Rule of Law is available online, and if you see it, I can testify. See it and weep with anger at repression, with joy at the fight back, and with awe at the spirit of this remarkable woman, and this wonderful film. So, thank you, Lorie.
Thank you, Robin. And more information can also be found on the website ruleoflawfilm.com.
Great. Perfect.
And I so appreciate your interest, and I will keep you, apprised as we move forward with Tiny Ripples.
Yes, you have to come back and talk to us when that one's done, too. All right. Thanks again so much for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Thanks again.
Thank you.
It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live, and I am Robin Morgan. Coming up, we're going to go into outer space and discover that there are laws already in place about what to do there and how to do it. But did you have a voice in those laws? Do I? What do we do about that? Stay tuned.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest, Dr. Edythe Weeks, is a professor of space law. She's an expert in outer space development and equality. Her book, Outer Space Development, International Relations and Space Law, A Method for Elucidating Seeds, was published in 2012. She has a new book coming out. Other areas of her expertise include astronautics, race, and ethnic relations. Here is Dr. Edythe Weeks. Edythe Weeks, Dr. Weeks. Edythe, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Robin. It's so great to be here.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you here. I am so glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, that there is a political, feminist, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-all the bad things sensibility with expertise that's taking on the issues involved with space development and space law. Listeners to this program know that I'm a bit of a science geek and a space geek, and I've been a little bit worried for some time that as we export ourselves slowly but surely out into the solar system and beyond, we bring with us all those terrific things about humanity's history: racism, sexism, anti-disability, you name it. And so I'm especially delighted in not only that you're a space law expert, but that your focus is on outer space development and equality. Talk to us about that and why it's important, because most people don't even think about this.
Yeah, well, first of all, Robin, I have to say I'm just in shock that finally someone cares about my writings. I've been talking and writing and thinking since 1991. And I looked into the future. First of all, I've given up on humankind on Earth experiencing equality in my lifetime. I've given up on that idea.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful and optimistic about achieving those grandiose ideas in the future. And so I looked into the future and I discovered, how do you find out what's going to be happening in the future? Well, first of all, I had to go back to school and get a PhD in order to do that without sounding crazy, because I saw that the next territory scheduled for development seemed to be outer space. The International Astronautical Federation Congresses, people from about 150 nations tend to turn out every year for this conference. And so right there, if you can just imagine the different colors and ethnicities that would be involved with 150 different countries, you can see what I mean.
That helps. That certainly helps in terms of ethnicity and race. But yeah. What about gender?
Well, that's starting to change. I started getting involved in space community conferences in 2002. And between that time and now, I've seen a huge spike in gender, similar to college campuses.
One of the things that delights me about your work is that you're sending out a clarion call to educators to factor equality and diversity into the process of outer space development. And by doing that, in other words, creating an actual movement to teach space studies, which is a term rarely that isn't in common parlance yet, to all students, so that they grow up, particularly those in the behavioral and social studies area, they grow up space study literate. Because if we're only going out there with pale males or to mine and take territory, we're bringing our socio-political disease with us.
First of all, you get an A+, Robin, on articulating my thesis and my work. I love the way
thank you
stated that. And that term, you picked up on something here, space studies. I had to coin a phrase to give people the idea of what I mean. So I've been looking at curricula, K through 12 as well as university curriculum. Space studies tends to be just for an elite few, maybe a few students in engineering or STEM or astrophysics or something, but not for like the ethnic studies students or the international relations students or the political science students. And it's certainly not for the kids who are in trouble or who've been left behind or who are scheduled for prison or for unemployment.
Of course not.
So it occurred to me, if we start teaching students, instead of just beating them with rulers to force them to understand things that they may or may not be interested in, why not teach them about their lives? Because my students, that's what they want to really know about. They may sit there and take notes, but in the back of their heads, they're thinking about their life.
Well, and also,
what am I going to do with my life?
Of course they are, but also, my God, Edythe, their eyes would light up, their brains would light up at the idea of space studies. What kid, male or female, in high school or junior high or so forth, doesn't do a double take if you say, okay, today we're going to study outer space? My God, look at the box office for Star Wars. So there's a thirsty, hungry audience out there. This is one area where social progress studies, which is basically really what you're doing, would catch fire like a prairie fire.
What I'm teaching people is how to get it, how to make it for themselves.
Great.
Because we may never be given privileges from the few elites who are in the position to give us knowledge and privileges. So we live in a world right now where we can take the information that we can do our own research. I've been teaching children, for example, to just do their own research.
Good.
So I empower students, everyday people, to make libraries or coffee shops your corporate headquarters, because you have an unlimited, and with the internet, you have unlimited access to free data, free information, free books, videos. I was asked a question. I got invited to give a talk as a colloquium speaker on space mining and international space law at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the professors asked me, he said, okay, I read your book. I've got a question for you. Okay, you say space studies for everyone, but space studies is expensive. How can everyone access space studies? This is my question. That's what he asked me. So I said, well, I was able to become a leading expert in space law through the public library resources for free. I took what I knew, which was I knew how to study law. I knew how to go to the library. I knew how to read and think and make notes. When I stumbled across a book entitled Space Law, laws tend to be instruments for mechanisms of power.
Right.
But the irony with space is that the laws, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, for example, which is a constitution for outer space, the laws say that as humankind advances into space, all people must benefit.
Right.
That's the irony of this.
Irrespective of the degree of their economic or scientific development. Yes, but that I don't think, frankly, that would happen, except for your being on the case and those you educate, because I think that the law of averages of power would be to continue the same problems unless we're on it like a duck on a June bug pouncing. I think the tendency would to be more of the same. And the heartbreaking thing is that rather than export sexism and racism and all the bad things, we have a chance here to really make it right, and to explode in the best sense, blossom into the fullness of our humanity. Edythe, we've got to go, but thank you so much for the work that you're doing. The book, the book is called Outer Space Development, International Relations and Space Law, and it's terrific.
Yes, I have a new book, Robin. I created it with a co-author for teachers. It's called Teaching to Illuminated Minds, Using Space to Heighten Engagement and Innovation to Stimulate Learning. So maybe I can come back on and talk about that. I've created a methodology for teachers, and I've created an online class that anybody can take for just $27, which makes it accessible. And if people want, they can take it for $1. If they email me, I can send them a special coupon. It's on udemy.com.
Tell us how they find the course and the.
Okay. All right. Udemy, it's udemy.com. It's a new thing. It's a new online database of world experts who converted their knowledge to online format. So people just go to udemy.com, type in New Trends for Outer Space Development, and you'll see my course. And it's got register. And the fee is $27. But like I said, they've given me the right to create coupons. So I can make $5 coupons, $1 coupons, whatever. I just want people to learn the knowledge. There's no tests, no exams, no quizzes, just fun learning from a university professor. So I want to put that out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is terrific, and the new book sounds great as well. You sound great as well, and definitely you come back and talk to us more. And thank you for being a space geek with expertise and political consciousness. Thanks so much, Edythe, for being with us today.
Thank you, Robin.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. The Surrealism Corner, particularly in an election year, and especially in an election year when a woman is running for President of the United States and stands a chance of actually winning, making history. Well, given those circumstances, the Surrealism Corner is stunningly full. There seem to be special standards for Hillary Rodham Clinton. There's the standards for sort of everybody else, and then there's the category for Hillary Rodham Clinton, or anybody who would be female with her credentials, her history, and in the position she currently is. For example, the ever-rising and being made use of email controversy, which is an empty one, but there you go. The emails, that are now in question have been retroactively classified. Yeah, that's a mouthful to say, but it's absolutely true. Dianne Feinstein, who's the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said, and I quote, "First, the 22 emails the State Department has labeled classified now, that's retroactively, are part of a 7 separate back-and-forth email chain, and none of these email chains originated with Secretary Clinton. It has never made sense to me," says Feinstein, "that Clinton can be held responsible for email exchanges that originated with someone else. And second, none of the emails sent to Secretary Clinton have the mandatory markings that are required when classified information is transmitted." And then, of course, we have 3, which is that they don't have those markings because at the time they were sent, they were not classified. That's happened later. Oh, my God. It's like, talk about the locking the barn door after the horse has, that one. Now, I don't think necessarily it was a brilliant thing to have the emails on a private server, but then again, I don't think that was particularly brilliant for, I don't know, Secretary of State Colin Powell to do the same thing, or Secretary of State Madeleine Albright to do the same thing, or Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice to do the same thing, or for that matter, especially Karl Rove, when he was special counsel to the president, to do the same thing with millions of emails. But that doesn't, any of that matter, you see, because they all function under other standards, and then there are the HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton standards, specially for her. In that same category, journalist Bob Woodward, this past week, made breathtakingly patronizing comments about her and her style of speaking. He was on MSNBC's Morning Joe show, and he said, and I quote, I'm sure you heard this, "She shouts. There is something unrelaxed about the way she is communicating." Close quote. Now, if I didn't have to pull myself up off the floor from thinking it hysterically funny that he thinks being in the position she's in should be, I don't know, relaxed, then I would take this with greater levity. But the truth of the matter is that Christie bellows, Cruz snarls, Trump booms. The Republicans alone have generated enough anger to light a pyre on which they would, what about that? Burn a witch. How about that? And even Sanders never speaks below a shout. But she is shouting. You can't win for losing, because if you don't shout and you smile your way through incredible insults and attacks and try to get your policies and programs out there, then you're inauthentic because you're not emotional. But if, in fact, you finally get a little bit pissed off and your anger management persona surfaces for a minute and you say things that are a little bit strong, somebody is bound to say, look at that, she's shouting. Last time in 2008 that she ran, Woodward, the other half of Woodward and Bernstein, wrote that she had thick ankles, and then he tried to, forgive the pun, walk that back. Now Woodward is saying that she shouts. And, it hurts and it angers me because I admired these guys. It's sort of like, when the left insults you and betrays you, you sort of feel, well, I expected it from the right. But the left, it's like breaking up with a lover, and you think a male lover in this case, and you think to yourself, what was I thinking? Was he always this way? Did I just not see it? Did he become such a prick? Anyway, those are 2 little items in the Surrealism Corner. There'll be many more to come because this is an election year and a woman stands a chance of making history. Whoop-de-doo. Special rules and standards. Surreal ones. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'm asking you if you knew that there were 100 things that you could do to empower women and make their lives better, each of them for $100 or under that, would you not be interested? Of course you would. That's why you're going to stay with us for the next segment.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. Betsy Teutsch is my next guest. She's been a blogger, a columnist, a community organizer, and an eco-activist. She was a founding board member of the award-winning Shining Hope for Communities organization and the Kibera School for Girls, and she launched 3 local chapters of a group called Dining for Women, a national network of giving circles supporting women's grassroots initiatives, ways of addressing environmental problems and at the same time lifting women out of poverty is her obsession, and she's given us a remarkable book about that. Betsy Teutsch, welcome to the program.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Robin.
Thank you.
Followed your work for a long time.
Well, thank you. 100 under $100. And the subtitle is 100 Tools for Empowering Global Women. This is the most terrific compendium of activism, consciousness raising issues, It's effective, low-cost solutions for helping women in the global south out of poverty. It covers so many different sections. I mean, it's things that can be done with, as you call it, shoestring philanthropy under $100 are absolutely amazing. I mean, strategy cell phones can be bought, solar lights, 5-year enduring $9 contraceptives.
Can you believe that?
Well, I can. $1 eyeglasses, $1, and a kid can see, a woman can see. Clean birth kits. I mean, and it goes on, and it's just and it's a lively book to look through and read. It's accessible, and of course, it changes consciousness as you do read, because it makes people aware that women are the world's poor, that poverty is endemic among women, and of course many men as well, but women are the poorest of the poor. So how did you come to do this?
Well, I got started in the tech sector. I was very interested in environmentally smart solutions and worked for an organization that linked that to microfinance. So I had always been interested in helping women through micro-lending, but I didn't see a connection to the technology or something as simple as the solar panel. But Green Microfinance, the group that I worked with, promoted solar panels. And when I realized that you could have this wonderful twofer, that you could put one solar panel on a woman's hut somewhere in a remote area and transform her life and help get her on a toehold up out of poverty, I just was wowed. 2 problems solved at once.
Yeah.
So I came in from the technology side and noticed that there were these great solutions, many of them which were domestically based, so they impact women hugely.
Yeah.
But there seemed to be no women in the whole supply chain, in the marketing, in the distribution.
What do you know?
And women are not going to adopt new technologies if they don't have access to them, don't understand them, and are really not the target audience.
Of course.
So that was a problem. And then on the women's side, I was involved with a wonderful school for girls in Kibera called the Shining Hope for Communities. And the girl effect is so powerful. If you can educate girls and break this whole cycle, then you have a whole new world with dropping fertility, increasing income.
Right.
But then again, they were very tech shy. And the same thing, I have been very involved in an organization called Dining for Women, and it is a giving circle. There are about 400 chapters around the country, and it's incredibly educational. We learn about a grassroots developing world solution for women each month, and then people fund it with the money. It's a potluck dinner. The money you would have spent on dinner, you donate to the program, and it's added up to $2 million already for targeted, it costs so little to make a difference for women. But again, very little technology. So my book came out of my desire to fill that disconnect, literally, between women and technology. It's worldwide. It's no different, really, in our culture. But
right.
In the developing world, it just has such dire results.
Well, Betsy, what I love about this book, and for that matter, Dining for Women, which this is the national network that you founded, is that these things are solution oriented, and they're simple, because patriarchy makes it seem as if, oh my God, to transform into for example, a green economy, or for women to be treated like human beings, big shock, is just too expensive. It would upend everything. It's too complicated. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. When actually it's cheaper, it's simpler, it's clearer, and it's so simply doable. And that's the last thing, of course, that they want to hear. The patriarchs, that is. But it's so encouraging, because the things that people can do for under $100, or that contribute for the price of a dinner, are amazing. I mean, and the book is absolutely full of them. Give some examples.
Well, one of my favorite stories is Cynthia Koenig. She's a social entrepreneur, young woman, and she's working in India. Women are, for some reason, the designated water carriers.
Yeah, what do you know?
Kind of carrying water is an expression for being loaded down. Water is incredibly heavy, and if you don't have running water, you have to go get it.
Right.
So, and if the women are getting it, then nobody accounts for the time that it takes them to get it. But it can be a 2-hour-a-day chore, and you're carrying empty vessels on the way to the water, but you're carrying full ones on the way home. They can weigh 44 pounds, Robin.
That's right.
It's as like one of those suitcases that you struggle to carry.
Mm-hmm.
So she has developed a rolling water wheel. It's called the Wello Water, and it looks kind of like a giant Fisher-Price toy, but it rolls the water, and it can roll twice as much water as a woman can carry, which is automatically liberated half the time. And one of the fun things about it is that men are stigmatized if they're carrying water. That might as well just tell the world that they're a wimp. But they like this tool, so they're willing to help their wives, because they see this as technology, not as
of course
carrying water.
Of
so
course.
These solutions have to be culturally smart. They
yes.
have to sort of end run these old attitudes that women and men are completely divorced
yes,
and separate in their tasks.
And they have to go in at a grassroots level. It's very important, obviously, to go in at a policy level as well. I mean, for example, women are the water haulers and the fuel gatherers of the world, but wherever we do that, it's not considered, because it's not paid, it's not considered, part of the economy, and it's not considered, quote, productive, unquote.
Yeah.
And
there's something called time poverty, which is what women suffer from in the developing world. They literally don't have enough time to do any income-generating work. So they're just stuck doing these tedious tasks. Really, they do it like we did them in the 18th century.
That's right. Well, they exist in a different century, in effect. And when a country burns fossil fuel, for example, miners, are considered. I mean, they're in the labor force. They're real. So their labor is not invisible. But if it's a wood burning, or if it's gathering manure or peat, then it's women's job, and then it's invisible. So a tool that makes it attractive to men is very interesting, very ironic and interesting. But mostly, it's because they've discovered that if you make the tools a girl color, then sometimes the men don't appropriate them. Men are the gatekeepers for technology, so you really have to work around that. That's true. And talk about the $9 contraceptive and the $1 eyeglasses.
Well, the $9 contraceptive is an implant, and it works. It literally prevents conception for 5 years. It's about the size of a matchstick, and it goes right under the skin. It's very discreet. The woman's husband does not need to know that this is the case.
No, that's important.
She has control over her fertility. It's completely reversible. And often the health clinics and health systems in poor countries are so ineffective and so fragile
Yeah.
that if a woman goes to get contraceptives, even if the government provided them, she'd have to walk there, she'd have to carry babies on her back. When she gets to the clinic, it's likely not open, or they might not have the contraceptives. This way, it only needs to be done once every 5 years. And it's available in the United States, and guess what? The price is probably 10 times higher than in the developing world, maybe even more.
Of course. Of course. Well, this is a wonderful book. Again, it's called 100 under 100 $, and then 100 100 tools for empowering global women. The author and compiler is Betsy Teutsch. That's Teutsch, and it's sold, I gather, wherever books are sold.
Right, you can get it on Amazon or a signed copy from me. My website is just 100under100.org. No $.
Okay, that's fine. Say it again.
100under100.org.
And also, Betsy is donating a life-saving dose of misoprostol to Life for African Mothers for each book sold. So every aspect of this book serves women. And if those of you who have loved my anthology, Sisterhood is Global, should regard this as a companion volume almost, because this is, if you're first encountering the status of women worldwide and tearing your hair out during Sisterhood is Global, this will pick you up off the floor and tell you what you can do about it. Thank you for this book, Betsy.
Well, I am so thrilled to tell everybody all the great things women are doing around the world, both the engineers and designers of fabulous tools and also the women themselves who work so hard.
Yeah, they're pretty fantastic. And so are you. Thank you for being with us also on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you.
One more break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and Robin Morgan will be right back with some, yes, fighting words. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Okay, the primaries. Sexism, racism, ageism. Here we go again. Not back to the future, but apparently forward to the past. Former Vermont Governor Madeleine Kunin had an interesting piece in the Boston Globe. She wrote, Hillary Clinton is not the first progressive Democratic woman to be challenged by Sanders. He ran against me in 1986 when I was running for my second term as governor of Vermont. When advised that his third-party candidacy might result in a Republican victory, he said he saw no difference between Democrats and Republicans, close quote. In other words, the familiar Ralph Nader disaster position that brought about Al Gore's presidential defeat and ushered in George Bush. In any event, voters did not agree. Sanders got only 14% of the vote, and Kunin won. She was a very progressive governor. She openly was for ratification of the ERA. Her first priority as governor was universal access to kindergarten, and she set a record for a Vermont governor's appointees, filling half her cabinet with women. In her Boston Globe piece, she writes, quote, women draw on a different network than men and can share an alternative definition of who is qualified. Hillary's campaign staff is over 50% female. Sanders' campaign began with a predominantly male inner circle and continues to face accusations of keeping women out of the top ranks. Close quote. When Sanders was Kunin's opponent, she writes, he focused on his class analysis, saying that so-called women's issues, he used the term, were essentially a distraction from more important ones, I guess, as defined by him. But this didn't stop him from saying that he would make a better feminist than Kunin. She writes, quote, he urged voters not to vote for me because I was a woman, which would be a sexist position, he said, close quote. Now, think about that. Just think about it. To vote only on the basis of sex or race or any other such aspect is not wrong if the candidate is a qualified one. Then there's a different name for it. It's called affirmative action. I would hope that Sanders and his supporters would never say that it would be, or in fact was, racist for African American citizens to vote proudly for Obama because he was black. Although, considering that most Sanders supporters are white, maybe they would say such a thing. Which reminds me that things will get more interesting as the campaigns leave behind corn-fed lily-white Kansas and university campus-glutted lily-white New Hampshire, on to places where there are actually some voters of color. What a concept, despite the GOP and right-wingers' voter repression tactics. This also means that those obsessed with the seeming generational divide over Sanders versus Hillary followers will be forced to face a hard fact. Nationally, 40% of millennials are not white, and nationally, Sanders' youth vote shrinks precisely because of that. National polls show Clinton well ahead among voters 18 to 45. Among African Americans nationally, Hillary wins a staggering 82% support compared to Sanders' 8%. 82% versus 8%. And among Latinos and Latinas, it's Clinton at 48% to Sanders at 36%. In other words, the narrative that millennials all love Bernie is based almost entirely on polls from states where you could go snowblind from looking at the population. It must bother these principled young whites that their revolution, as they call it, doesn't include the majority of women and men of color, older women, poor and working-class women, the disabled, and the gay and lesbian community, the vast majority of whom, all of those, are backing Clinton, while the Republican real establishment is airing pro-Sanders commercials because he's the one they want to run against. Another note on race. A revealing new study from the Harvard Graduate School of Education noted that white boys are most likely to win elections for student government, while white girls are least likely to lead, and white girls were also the least likely to support one another, while girls of color were more politically trusted and trusted each other as leaders. Interesting. Look, I respect that my young sisters who are pro-Sanders have serious reasons for their political positions, and I respectfully disagree with those positions. Still, I do grant you that sometimes it's hard to keep from responding to ageism with ageism. When, for example, I read in the Washington Post that Alexis Isabel Moncada, who has a popular Twitter account and is 17 but will be old enough to vote in November, where she's quoted as saying, Hillary doesn't seem to address the huge issues, and she says Hillary's having been a former First Lady, U.S. Senator, and Secretary of State creates a, quote, disconnect with the entirety of women, close quote. Now, I get lost trying to figure out who or what constitutes the entirety of women because my apparently silly little old lady brain goes immediately to the women I have worked with and still do in refugee camps and favelas and rice paddy villages and Bedouin tents, in prisons, campuses, nunneries, legislatures, and factories and brothels around the world. I do not think that's who Alexis had in mind, however. But then I got further befuddled by her implicit conclusion that experience in high office and expertise with global issues and familiarity with world fame, in other words, a woman with a modicum of power and success, ought to lose so that women can identify with her? I guess because women should not identify with succeeding? My clearly frail, apparently antique mind admits to difficulty following such convoluted logic. Back to Madeleine Kunin, who points out Sanders has become more sophisticated in his campaign than when he lost to her, but that he still makes the answers sound easy, which in turn makes him sound authentic. A vague, "we need a revolution," is more powerful in a speech than "I have a plan." but plans are useful. Personally, I come of a generation that once chanted, "Level everything, then we'll talk politics." So I can say from having lived it that cheap authenticity, promises, and solutions may taste good at first, but half an hour later you're really, really hungry again. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com. There you can find the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Regina K. Scully is our founding sponsor. Julie Burton, Women's Media Center President, is executive producer. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMClive.com. Talk radio with a brain.